Okay, today we're going to have an overview of the design build process. Now, this can go a couple different ways, and that's just how it goes, right? You'll have to work out what the contracts look like, how this process goes with your GC for the project, right? For design build. So, in a standard, let's just go through design bid build real quick and then how that translates over to design build. So design bid build, you've got basically two different contracts that get held, one from the owner to the general contractor, and then another one from the owner to the typically it's the architecture team, and then the architecture team subcontracts out the rest of design, right? To the MEP team, structural engineer, civil engineer. Sometimes that's all in-house, but typically that's how it goes. So architect subs all the rest of the design out, and then same with the general contractor, right? Subs everything else out, which as a contractor makes perfect sense. Pretty straightforward on that side. So design team works, goes through the design process. There's another video here in the channel that goes through the 7 stages of design. And just as a quick overview, it's planning, programming, then schematic design documents, construction documents, to bidding, construction, and closeout, right? Those are the 7 phases of design. I know construction's in there, but that's one of the phases, right? We call it CA, and then that's broken out a little bit from bidding, CA, construction, administration, and then closeout. So the 7 phases there of construction. So in a design build world, some of this would get condensed a little bit, right? You're still going to have planning and programming from the architecture team to the owner. And typically in a design build framework, the architect is still going to get contracted typically to the owner, but the GC could hold everything, right? So a couple different contract structures that could happen there. One is architect to owner holds all that, or it's GC holds all of it, right? Holds all the construction contracts, all the design contracts, and they hold the whole package basically. So then the owner just has one contract to the GC, and then everything gets subbed out from there. In the design build world, what would happen? Let's say that this gets all done under the GC. So it holds all the contracts. They're going to bring the architects in to the owner. And really the biggest there's a couple different differences. One is in how the contracts get structured. The other one is how not only contracts get structured, but payouts as well as bidding pieces, right? What's the final price of the building going to be? And when does that happen? So obviously in normal design bid build, right? You get a price during bid phase. That's what's in their price. You've already got your design pieces. You've already got your cost of design that's already done by the time bidding comes around. So then you've got a bid phase. Everybody turns in their bids, and you got a team. You might have selected a GC before that. We already know what the GC markup is going to be: 3, 5, 7, 10%, whatever their markup piece is on the project. And so the owner's already agreed to that markup piece. And then basically all the contracts and what the price is going to be gets done for basically all the specialty contractors, put in their price, and then the GC adds their piece to it. And that's how it goes, right? That's traditional design bid build. Now in the design build world, this can go a couple different ways. One, the general contractor, who's a design build contractor by nature, they would basically do their estimates, put all their pricing together, and effectively, and working with their specialty contractor partners, be able to give the owner a price for that building before they even start the main pieces of design, right? They know what their architect's fees are. Their contractors have the engineer on their team, so they would know those prices. Those all get built in, and then they would go from there, right? Put a full package and price together for the building and go from there. On bigger projects, what I've seen is, again, this can go there's a lot of ways this can go. And it's really what can you agree to help mitigate risk on a lot of it. Giving a price up front without full design being done is obviously inherently more risky than waiting for design to be done, getting pricing, counts, final quantities to lock in that price. Typically what I've seen done is on these projects is the owner selects their contractors. They give a ballpark estimate for what the owners want to be done, right? They bring in the architect, get scope for it, right? Figure out how many rooms, how many stories, how big this is going to be, whether they're going to have shelf spaces and not build out anything yet, or fully build out everything. depending on where the budget falls and what they can shell or what they don't shell. Are we doing core and shell? Are we doing tenant fit out? Depending on the project type, all that would need to be determined. But let's say that you have let's just call it an office building for single tenant, and that's it, right? So one company building an office building, let's call it 100,000 square foot office space. And what they end up having is, in this scenario that I'm going to walk through, and again, there's so many ways that this can be sliced, but I'll just give you one way that it can go. Let's say the GC holds everything. So the owner over, right, for corporate office, that owner selects the general contractor, and then the GC would go and get architecture first, right? They figure out, again, size, scope, planning, how many offices are needed, what's needed in the facility. Are they doing basketball courts and ping pong tables and pool hall? What's being done in this office space, right? Corporate office. So they figure all that stuff out. Now they have a square footage, right? Let's say it's 100,000 square feet. Now they can start to put some budgetary numbers around it. Steel, general square foot numbers for lighting, for electrical, mechanical, plumbing. They can start to do FF&E budgets, just rough stuff on a per office basis or per square foot, however they want to do it. And then you have steel numbers, you'll have concrete numbers, you'll have parking numbers, all those kind of things that they can roughly square foot it out to and put a budget number together for the project. Then as we move through the different design phases, so now you as electrical contractor teamed with us for design, right, for the engineering side of it, right, getting into design build, you team with an engineer, Cowabunga Studios for that. You'd then be able to basically, we'd work in tandem, right? So we'd help set up the project. We'd work with the architects, right? They're doing everything in Revit. And so the architects lead everything, the ceilings, walls, floors, doors, all that stuff gets added. Structural's got their pieces in there, the grid's in. We have our electrical rooms in the project. And then as we go through it, we'll make sure and work. This is the beauty of a design build project in working hand in hand through the whole thing, right? We can have electrical rooms laid out. We can have lighting packages selected through your vendor of choice, right? Making sure that we have a lighting package that aligns with the vendors that you want to use, getting pricing from them, working with them on the entire project for lighting controls, all that. We can work all of this kind of in tandem with the rest of the team. So we can maybe look at doing coordination on rack builds with the mechanical and plumbing team. So that you have single pieces of unistrut that hold all three disciplines in them. There's so much we can do in this. Basically, that we then go through the design phases, right? So schematic is just, I don't even know if we'd have to do a narrative at this point, because again, in the design build phase, we try to shortcut a lot of this stuff. So you'd still have programming, you'd have architectural, schematic, structural would start to move in there. And then really the big efforts that we would have are going to be in the design document phase, figuring out utilities, getting everything laid out and put in, figure out lighting packages for the majority of lights. We would figure out the power package for it. We're using generators. Who do we need for generators? What are lead times? Things like that. So we can start to order some of the big gear for the project and get that out of the way early and then move into the other pieces, right? We'll start to detail everything out, get circuiting done, figure out our panel sizing, that kind of stuff. There's some things that we do want to wait until like mechanical systems or their selections are finalized, their loads are finalized. I've seen huge swings in mechanical packages at the very end, and that's not something that we want to have and deal with. We've ordered main gear, and then we figure out that the electrical or the mechanical team with a change in manufacturers or change in product or whatever they might be going through on their side, we have a 400 or 500 amp swing in just load from all the mechanical equipment. So huge deltas can happen in the mechanical side if they have a big change that they have to make to their systems. And so we don't want to be caught red-handed. So a little bit of chicken and egg there with things like that. We want to make sure that everything's sized appropriately before we place an order for gear, especially. Same with like panel sizing, things like that. If they have a change where we can't use natural gas anymore for heat, they go to electric heaters, or they want instantaneous hot water heaters. There's a lot of that stuff where our gear sizes dramatically increase to deal with that. So we want to make sure, again, that those pieces are finished. And then in this, there's a couple of different ways it can go. When we give that initial first budget number at the beginning of it, some square foot numbers to the general contractor. They're running the project. And then as we move through at the end of each design phase, there'd be another price set done. So we would make sure that we can do pricing throughout. And as a design build piece of this in working in conjunction, what you normally wouldn't get on the project is going to be like counts. Counts is the biggest one, right? Normally not going to get counts, especially broken out by sheet or any of that stuff. And we can start to provide counts for every single element within that Revit model, right? Counts for normal receptacles, duplex receptacles, quads, GFCIs, right? We can start to count everything in that project: dimmer switches, occupancy sensors, vacancy sensors, wall mounted aux, ceiling mounted aux, exit signs, every single light fixture count within the project. So we have a lot of elements that we can provide counts so that pricing becomes so much faster throughout. And then there's some things too that we can do within Revit as well, like dimension sets to quickly give dimensions from electrical rooms to the center of each given room, basically within the floor or on that floor, so that we can start to do circuiting distances and stuff like that for wire lengths and counts. So a lot of things that we can end up doing within Revit to give you the ability to just have quicker turnaround on pricing. And so that for every pricing deliverable that we have to make, right, whether that's SD, DD, 75, 90, 95% construction document CDs, that it doesn't take a week or two to hand to the estimators to deal with pricing. We can do this a lot faster and iterate quicker through that by providing counts, then putting costs to each item and summing them up in a simple Excel sheet. Stuff like that can really dramatically improve it. And then again, and if you have pre-construction guys or some of your like foremen, superintendents, whoever's running the job for you, would be able to then jump in and like at each phase, make sure that we're putting the project together, that if there's anything from a installation standpoint that we need to look at or make sure that we're doing properly, or just inform everybody, we have so many of those opportunities throughout the project to properly communicate. And again, making sure everything's up to code, everything's sized properly, like all that kind of good stuff throughout this process, so that by the time construction hits, that we have access to the building where steel's going up, all that kind of good stuff, that either we've started to prefab things or have the ability to prefab it, start to do whips. There's so many opportunities for not only productivity improvement, but just making sure that, again, everybody's on the same page for design, because we've been in the project together for the entire project, which might be a little new, right? If you're new to design build, it's a new thing to really have access and to see the process unfold. And yeah, drawings are still going to magically show up. At least this way, you'll have input in the project to be a part of that throughout the whole process. It's really going to be a big benefit to you in the firm in being able to, again, review it, price it, have pricing throughout, and making pricing choices throughout the project to help the owner out, to help you guys out. Everybody wins basically in that design build project. When we team together, we're coming in as basically a team. You guys as the kind of lead in it, us doing design and engineering for you, and helping that whole project shepherd it through design and then ultimately executing in the field. And then once we have that piece, we go to construction. We can break up drawings to only a few rooms, right? We can give you so much insight to the project, to a room. We can color code things. We can do it through the model. There's a ton of stuff that we're able to do with that model and allowing you to execute it easier, right? Hand in, whether it's paper on 8.5 by 11s versus dealing with 30 by 42s. There's a lot of stuff that we can end up doing to improve the speed at which we design and put things together. So looking forward to working with you on a design build project. But just to give you an idea, that's really the overview of the project. We've got all these milestones from programming, which again is mostly architecture, to schematic, which is architecture and structural primarily. And then really the big ones for electrical is design documents and construction documents and getting all that stuff on paper. A lot of those timelines will shrink, and then into construction and some pricing in between. Then we get paid in the phases, and whether typically it's at the end of the month, we'll bill for design at whatever milestone we're at. Design documents is really about 60% of the way through the project. Some of these percentages can vary, but 60% of the way through the project when you're at design documents. And then CDs, it takes the next 30, with typically bidding goes away at 5% maybe, and then 5 or 10% left over for construction. It's typically how the billing of it works, and then you bill monthly through those phases depending on where you're at in them, and typically a net 30 term. Depends on how you sign these contracts. If you can get that 15 or things like that, that's what so much better. But anyway, that is how these works with all the 7 phases of construction from the design aspect anyway. Then integrating the teams into it from a design build standpoint, working together to do a lot of this, getting pricing and design done hand in hand, and then moving right into construction. And then a little bit of the billing and payment terms work within that. That's this video on just a quick overview on design build. Again, each contract is going to be slightly different as to what you're able to execute with the owner or general contractor, and we go from there. So, however you can negotiate it is what it amounts to. So, thanks for watching, guys.